Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hello. Welcome to Cycles of Time. This is your weekly forecast for June 24th to 30th. And this episode is called Keeping Still in Cancer Season. I hope you all had a beautiful solstice and full moon and Gate of Extremes week last week. I definitely was tapping into that energy of fluorescence, the process of bursting into flower that we kind of talked about in last week's episode as the highest frequency of the Gate of Extremes. Last week was all about kind of holding polarity with both the full moon in Capricorn opposite the sun in Cancer and the entrance to a new season and the longest day and shortest night. And there was just a lot of energies that were kind of like very dynamic, right? And so last week was all about holding that together, kind of like holding a magnet where there's a positive and a negative polarity, and it creates this strong magnetism, and it creates, blossoming of new adventures happening. So I definitely, really liked the energy last week. Even amidst some challenging things, it really felt like there was just a dose of positivity, of people putting themselves out there in ways that I hadn't seen in a while, and being authentic with the ability to hold multiple truths. And so that was kind of my overarching feeling about how last week's energy showed up. I spent solstice, the day before solstice, going on a nice little river tubing trip down the Rio Grande here in New Mexico with my daughter and my partner, and it was so fun. It was like hot and sunny, just drinking a cider on a tube, floating down the stream, really chill. And then by the end of it, it was like the wind kicked in and started blowing us upstream, and we had to kind of fight against that and pull the boats downstream. And then by the time we got to the pull-out point, the skies had turned into kind of like a crazy, beautiful, spirally clouds and lightning and thunder just as soon as we got out of the water. And it really felt just like perfect for this Gate of Extremes and a perfect solstice that wasn't all sun and flowers and rainbows, but it was lightning and thunder as well. So I'm curious what you all got into last week, how you celebrated. For me, it was all about just dipping some toes in water, and definitely got to do that. So it was really exciting. And this week we're moving into another type of energy as we enter Cancer season in its full solid week. And so we'll get into that. But I wanted to just make a little note before I get rolling on this forecast about kind of the feeling of listening to this podcast. And I've been a little self-conscious lately about just how many data points and facts and like different systems and words that I'm speaking every week. And I want this to be really what this podcast is all about for me, is being in my body and in aligning my body's rhythms with the rhythms of the earth and the changing seasons, and then kind of blowing my mind by looking at how ancient cultures from China to Babylon have kind of picked up on this as well and really formulated incredible mythologies and stories to talk about the changing seasons and how our bodies and our thought processes and our relationships change over that time as well. And so it's really a practice of embodiment that can, like, once it's embodied, be tapped into a mental construct or a story. And when that happens, it feels really juicy. But when it comes across, some weeks I'm less on than others, and it comes across as kind of like, here's this fact, and this fact, and here we are. And it's like, sounds like listening to I don't know, just a list of bullet points, which is definitely not a way that any of us absorb information. So that's why I like to include stories and personal anecdotes and references. But I'm just being kind of conscious of that right now as I am loving the information, but also wanting to make sure that it comes across in a way that feels helpful and beneficial. So I think, like, the best way to listen to this podcast is to let the words flow over you. And maybe I just spent a little bit of time on the river, and that really contributed to this, wanting to clarify this. But it's really just, letting the current flow through and kind of absorbing the words through osmosis rather than trying to kind of intellectually understand or hold on to any of the bits and bytes. I definitely go over a lot of information in each episode, and I know it can feel like a lot. Especially if you thought you were going to be tested on this information at the end of the season or something. Like, I think being in school, we're so used to, in the modern school system, it's so used to raising your hand and being like, is this going to be on the test, or can I zone out right now? And I remember always hearing that question, even in college, and feeling like, really, people are asking if this is going to be on the test. But that's what we're conditioned to want to know, is are we going to have to regurgitate this back out? And so I really don't want this to feel like that at all. I'd really much more have it feel like, it's flowing through. It's just like you're letting things wash over you. And if something comes up, some word or some phrase that resonates or doesn't resonate, feel free to jot that down and contemplate it a little further. But I think about in ancient China, where the I Ching was developed, it was not developed as a book of learnings. It was developed as a system of divination using yarrow stalks. And so there was engagement with the plant world and creating these divination totems and tools to contemplate, to throw down and see what comes up, and then contemplate a single hexagram, a single trigram, a single part of the natural world, because all of the hexagrams that are the origin of the I Ching are part of the natural world of thunder or mountain or lake or earth. And so thinking about that, how all of this information came to be, it was reformulated and analyzed and strategized over time, but it really began as I am here with the natural world. I am in relationship with the world around me, and I want to pick up some sticks. I want to engage with it, and I want to have some time to contemplate what the deeper meaning is about that. So, even in more modern system of human design, it's a common practice to not even study any of the gates until you're further along in your process of, they call it, in human design, it's called the experiment, when you start kind of living based on the information that's in these systems. And so, a lot of people don't really get too deep into the meaning of the gates because it feels like you're then just stuck in your mind, rather than embodying the power of what it's like to live your design. So, a lot of human design courses are called Live Your Design. And so it's about embodiment, it's about living, and it's really hard to not get stuck in the holding on to a data point, especially if you've worked in any kind of data science or anything that revolves around spreadsheets like I have. So, as I was tubing down the meandering lower Rio Grande River the other day, it was super slow, and except for a couple rapidy parts, but for the most part so slow that my daughter even fell asleep on my lap for half of it in the tube, and the sun baked down, and I was just really enjoying taking the world in from that slow and drifting vantage point. I was able to kind of just watch the breeze come through all of the different trees and listen to the song of red-winged blackbirds, and then see one fly out of the tree and scoop some insects up by the river, and watching tiny little fish swimming up the eddies, and just so slow. We didn't have music. We didn't have, a lot that we even wanted to talk about. It was just a very quiet, chill day. And I think that pace of life, it's hard to access these days, especially with phones in our hands 24/7. But I think it's important to remember, like, when we're trying to digest a lot of information about one of these ancient systems, whether it's the zodiac or the I Ching human design or the medicine wheel or any kind of system, that life was definitely a lot slower when these systems were developed and when they came to be. And that allowed us to recognize the cycles of the stars and the planets and the seasons on Earth and pay attention, because there wasn't that much else competing for our attention. And that was what kept us alive. So, for me, when I'm studying these systems, it's the reason why embodiment and feeling the natural rhythms in myself beyond my mind is so important, is because I think that's how it began, and that's the way to touch into it and really find meaning from it. So yeah, our minds are just on overdrive more than they've ever been, and the point of this podcast and this project is to slow down with the pace of nature and with the wisdom of our bodies, instead of trying to add more of these data points and numbers to crunch and assimilate in our brains. So that's my little, permission slip to just kind of zone out as much as you can and let this information flow over and see if a word sticks out to you or not. And just listen for the bird song, watch for the stick poking out of the river, but don't try to plan the whole course, because you don't know how it's going to go, right? So this week, this sun is transiting through the gate of Stillness, which is known as keeping still in the I Ching. And it's a perfect time to remember about stillness, and remember that, like a crab, we're in Cancer season, so crab metaphors abound. But, crabs are super still on the rocky shore until a wave crashes in. And so we have to remember that the best actions come from a place of stillness and not trying to anticipate what's coming, but waiting and assimilating what's already happened or where we are in the present moment. So let this forecast wash over you like water. And if a key phrase or word sticks out to you, jot it down, but don't try to hold on too tightly. And with that, we'll move on to the weekly forecast. So it's the first full week of Cancer season. It's a waning moon away from that Capricorn full moon, and waning daylight now until we get to winter solstice. The days will be getting shorter. In human design and the I Ching, June 24th to 29th the sun is in gate 52, the gate of inaction or stillness, after leaving the gate of extremes last week. And this week's themes are embody the mountain, be okay with being in your feels and whatever comes up. Here we are in Cancer season, after all, and waiting for the right time to act. Our place in the wheel of the year is the medicine wheel direction south, and fire and youth, the whooshing element of fire in the Taoist 5-element cycle, the pagan season of Litha after last week's Litha celebration of midsummer. We're in the zodiac season of Cancer from June 20th until July 20th, and the I Ching hexagram keeping still or in action. And then on Sunday at the very end of the week, we're going into the gate of provocation, which is water over mountain. So, yeah, I think that we're kind of in a phase of Gemini season fading. there's been a lot of great memes. I should just post more memes, I think, because they obviously stick with me. But a lot of great memes about the transition from Gemini to Cancer season on the astrology accounts that I follow, where Cancer, it's just such different energy, which really fits that gate of extremes for me. It's like some seasons seem more alike than others, like Aries into Taurus is like, oh, they're both horned mammals, right? But you go from Gemini, these like buzzing around chatty twins, to like a crab who is keeping still. It's quite a difference. And so we are rolling into that midsummer energy of the shelled creature. And since we're officially now in Cancer season, I thought it'd be fun to do a little review of the gates that the sun just transited through in the last month of Gemini, and then see what gates we have to look forward to in the upcoming month of the crab. So again, just let this wash over you. There'll be lots of words, but for me, it tells a story, and that's kind of why I want to highlight it a little bit and just do a little bit of a review. So the first gate of Gemini season, the sun was in gate 20, which is the gate of the now, where we surrendered to deep presence and the power of the moment. And then after that, the sun transited into the gate of skills and then the gate of change. And those were both gates that, to me, as I lived them, evoked Gemini's Greek and Roman origin story of the highly skilled and highly adventurous twins, Castor and Pollux. After the skills and adventure, we moved into gate 45, which was the gate of the gatherer. And that's where Gemini's social skills really shone through, with a desire to bring resources and people together for the greater good. So it's kind of like they start out, they're born, they're twins, they're looking at each other in the now. Then they gain skills, they go on adventures, they gather the resources together from their adventures and put together all the people that they've met on their adventures. And then after that, the next one was the gate of caution, known as standstill in the I Ching. And that was a time for kind of like after bringing it all together and just like, kind of climbing and gaining and like talking and doing a lot of action. The gate of caution came about for Geminis to recognize how important it is to wait for emotional clarity before speaking. Because gathering, the gate before that, is a gate of leadership. And once you become a leader, you have all these people and all these resources to distribute. It's then time to kind of recognize where your leadership is coming from. And that week was all about making sure that it's coming from the heart rather than the ego. And then the final gate last week for the solstice, on the cusp between Gemini and Cancer, the sun transited through the gate of extremes, which is all about humility, being humble, and embracing the diversity of experiences in life, from hot to cold and dark to light and happy to sad. And that's, again, I feel like a leadership gate, like an evolved version of Gemini, using those skills, using all of the things that they've seen on their travels and chats with the local community to hold all of it, to be like, this is life, and I got this. And so that's my little story about how all of those gates fit in within Gemini season. And I'll do the same for Cancer here in a minute, but I just wanted to say that, like, I'm really loving how each zodiac season is containing these 5 to 6 micro seasons informed by the 64 gates of the I Ching, and following the order of the gates each season this way, like through each of these gates, telling this story. It really helps me like see the sign, like Gemini or Cancer or Aries, as a more holistic kind of like evolved creature rather than a static thing. And I think, within sun sign astrology and horoscopes from the newspaper, we have a certain amount of stereotyping and shame and just a kind of like flattened perspective of an entire month. And a lot of early criticisms of astrology that I heard when I was kind of getting into it as a young person was just like, well, how could everybody be born in the month of Virgo have those traits. That seems impossible and way too flattening it, making it too simplified. And I agree with that. I think there's sun sign astrology can be very limiting, obviously, and it's a great gateway drug to then get into all the other planets. But for me, I love all the other planets, and I also am really loving focusing on the sun and the solar energy. I'm a Leo rising, so the sun is my gate, or the sun is my chart ruler, and so I'm just like doubling down on the sun and saying, okay, there's a lot that the sun has to teach us through its passing across the ecliptic and our revolution around the sun as earthlings. And so by focusing in on this, but being able to look at an arc of evolution or a climax and the things that are learned throughout a singular zodiac season is super, super fascinating, and doing it from different parts of the world and how this has been perceived in different ways, from China and, the East to Greece and the West. But, I do want to mention that in the zodiac itself, of course, in the Western zodiac, there are a lot of different ways of breaking up the zodiac sign month, the season as well. So Virgo could be broken into 3 decans, decan 1, 2, and 3, and that's another way that can also be associated with the tarot. And there's also a lot of different rulers of these different decans, depending on if you're looking at it from a Hellenistic perspective or an Egyptian perspective. And so within the history of astrology itself, there are so many ways to divide the micro seasons of the larger season as well. So you don't have to jump all the way across to the I Ching if you don't want to. But I think that was what fascinated me about the human design body graph when I first saw it. It was just like, ooh, I love that idea of synthesis. So here we are, and that's what we're doing. I think the cusps of between the seasons are also really interesting. The first gate of the astrological year is gate 25, and it spans between the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aries seasons, and it's the gate of innocence, which to me I think it's so cool that that's spanning those two astrology signs. Like Pisces is the end of the cycle of life. It's the primordial soup. It's the kind of end of an era. And then Aries is a new beginning, a sprout coming up into a new year, a new world. And so innocence seems perfect for that. And the cusp between Aries and Taurus is the gate of innovating or ordering. And that's kind of transitioning between the innocence of that first season of the year into the stability and creativity of the second season, which is like going from infancy to toddlerhood. It's like putting some order, some method to the madness at that point between those two signs. And then the cusp here between Gemini and Cancer season that we just experienced is the gate of extremes, and that is this transition period between childhood to adolescence in the life cycle wheel. And we talked a little bit about that in last week's episode. So I just watched the new Pixar movie, Inside Out 2, and if you haven't seen it, it's Inside Out 1 is about the emotions of a little girl kind of personified inside her mind, in her body, and it's joy and fear and anger and sadness and disgust were the 5 emotions. And then in Inside Out 2, new emotions are added to the picture once she turns 13 and enters adolescence. And these new emotions that enter the picture, like anxiety and ennui and embarrassment and envy, are definitely kind of extreme emotions. And also I just thought it was funny to watch this movie about this transition from childhood to adolescence and what's happening emotionally inside our bodies during the Gate of Extremes, which I really associate in the life cycle with that transition from childhood to adolescence. So it's pretty cool. I recommend it. I would check it out. There's one part I didn't like, but we don't have to get into that. For the most part, it was pretty good. As we enter Cancer season, the season of midsummer and the wheel of the year, and adolescence or teenagerdom in the life cycle wheel, the human designs that we'll encounter with their I Ching counterparts are the following. We have, the Gate of Extremes just happened on the cusp between Gemini and Cancer, and that was Earth over Mountain. Then we have the Gate of Stillness this week, which is Mountain over Mountain. Then next week we'll have the Gate of Provocation, Water over Mountain, or Rapids on the River. So that reminds me of like crab pulling his claws out, right? You got first the Gate of Extremes, the crab's kind of like in and out of the water and on land, in water, do two different places. Then the Stillness is like maintain calm, just let it wash over you. Then Provocation is like, okay, cool. There's waters are churning. It's time to get moving, get your claws out, make some things happen. Then we have the Gate of Beginnings, which is Wind over Mountain, and it's all about gradual progress. And the Gate of Details, which is Thunder over Mountain, or Smallness. And then finally, the last gate of Cancer season between Cancer and Leo cusp is the Gate of Stimulation, which is Fire over Mountain, and it's about traveling. So from all of those, something over mountain, you can tell that we're in the I Ching kind of season of the mountain, where the mountain is the lower trigram in all of the hexagrams of Cancer season. So that's another way to divide up the year into seasons, is through these 8 different base trigrams that throughout the process of traveling the wheel of the year, you start with thunder as the lower trigram in Aries season into Taurus season. Thunder is the thing that starts everything. It's like in the beginning there was a strike of lightning. And then after that it moves into Earth as the lower trigram in Taurus and Gemini season. And then now we're in mountain season from the end of Gemini through Cancer and into the beginning of Leo. So it'll go all the way around, and we'll hit all of the different 8 lower trigrams in order. And it's a beautiful, beautiful visual. I'll link it in the show notes to the blog where you can see this progression of trigrams. So yeah, my brain just loves these interconnections between the ancient ways of thinking and living the wheel of the year this way, and the seasons and the weather and the cycles of life that we witness all around us really have a huge impact on us now, and they had a huge impact on our ancestors. And even though it seems so simple and obvious in some ways, like talking about the weather is so boring, I just think that like the beautiful poetry and the myth and the complexity that comes out of these cycles create such a pulse in our modern lives that is just like right below the surface. So the 852, jumping into that, is the Gate of Inaction, keeping still. And it's represented, like I mentioned, by the double trigrams of mountain over mountain in the I Ching. And this is a time of temporary and self-imposed inaction for the benefit of assessment. That's how it's described in the Human Design book, Human Design, The Science of Differentiation. So it's kind of the definitive book that has little tidbits in it. But I think that the mountain over mountain almost speaks for itself. Some of these hexagrams do. It's just like a big mountain, a couple of big mountains that are just like, hey, you can't move me. I am staying still because I have enough internal power. I don't have to worry about moving. I'm just here. I've been here, right? And my partner, who is a Cancer, who produces the show, he's about to go on a 5-day backpacking trip to the mountains and a canyon as well, but during the transit of this gate of inaction. And I think it's just perfect time for that, where he's going to be tapping into that perfect stillness of nature and that powerful and silent and eternal earth and rock that is keeping watch over everyone. So I kind of love that he's a reflective and sensitive Cancer sun and also an avid mountain climber. And I didn't really put it together that it was the season of mountains, and he's just such a mountaineer. So it's kind of cool how they link together that way. Mountain over mountain is known as the Buddha gate, a gate of meditation and contemplation, of staying still amongst life's constant flux. So like the Buddha, if you have this gate in your chart, if it's active, or if any of us, as we experience the sun transiting through this gate this week, we can lean into the knowledge that the greatest seeds take the longest to germinate. And Gate 52 is just all about patience, and it lets life and dreams unfold without forcing or pushing or interfering. And this week, it's a time to know that out of a deep inner stillness comes a powerful action. And the crab, just think about a crab. I mean, really, just sitting there, so still, and then boom, just moves right out of the stillness. It's just the way it works. So in the Gene Keys, the energy of the mountain is represented by those 3 tiers of frequency. And so this gate has the shadow of stress, the gift of restraint, and the city of stillness. And the shadow this week could show up as an inability to keep still, like kind of being restless, or on the other end of it, it could show up as a feeling of kind of being stuck in a rut, which both of those, the restlessness and the feeling of kind of depression and stuckness, cause stress to our system, because we're either moving too fast to get out of the rut, or we're like lingering in the rut and calling it a rut and not seeing any way to exit. And so that could be kind of a negative manifestation of the energies of the week after kind of the exhaustion coming out of so much happening in late spring and Gemini season, all of the social energy that was happening. And after the solstice, it's almost this kind of like hangover, like, whew, we're in a new season. Like, I know several people that are going off of social media for Cancer season, and I saw a couple of different groups that I follow promoting that, like, we're going to have a WhatsApp group where we can all chat, like a smaller group of people who are our followers during this season, so that we don't feel like a complete withdrawal from social media or from being engaged in that way with other people. But also it's like less of the cacophony and fray, because there's definitely a burnout after a social burnout, like a vulnerability burnout, and a lot of feeling of just like, wow, I want to go float down that river every single day of Cancer season and not have to like tap into all of the happenings and doings as much. So I think that shadow really only shows up if you don't work with the energy, and you just feel like you have to keep going in the way that we've been going. But it's a whole new season, folks. We are here. Let the crab guide you, and how much it enjoys the stillness. The gift of restraint in the Gene Keys is often devalued because of how it sounds. And like the word restraint is not sexy or exciting. I mean, I guess restraint could be sexy in some ways, but we won't go there either. Definitely not like a dynamic sounding gate. Like if you have your sun gate here, it's kind of like, oh great, my gift is restraint, cool. But Richard Rudd, the author of the Gene Keys, and I agree, says it's truly one of the most important gifts and behaviors in the whole human genome, which is the ability to strike a balance between 2 extremes. So last week we were in the gate of extremes, and so we were holding the negative and positive polarities and the dynamism of everything in the world together in a single place, and like a magnet. So it could feel like too much, or it could feel magnetic and attractive, but we were just holding everything. And then this week we evolve into finding a balance or a still point. So So keeping still between opposing energies. And that is just a really incredible thing to be able to do. Richard Rudd says, no gene key is more fundamental to human life than this 50-second gene key. So that's quite a bold statement. And I love the description here. It says, it determines the source signature of all activity in the world. If you begin something from a place of fear, that seed of fear will infect every aspect of the expansion of that activity. Even though the smallest human actions can sometimes lead to the creation of vast empires, if the seed of fear is there at the beginning, then like a virus, it will pervade the structure and it will eventually bring that structure to the ground. The 50-second gift contains a secret of ecology. All true endeavors require a profound understanding of restraint, a phenomenon natural to all living systems. If a system is to last, it must learn to feed itself while it grows. If it is to proliferate, it must learn to diversify and take in an ever-expanding source of nutrients. However, for a system to be really successful, it must have one vital factor right at its core from the very beginning. It must serve more than just itself. The 50-second gift of restraint requires a great deal of patience and an understanding that everything in nature moves at its own speed. Particularly in the beginning, things appear to move slowly. The moment we try to rush an idea, we disturb the ground in which it is sown. You can see from this how easily humans fall victim to stress. So I think that's super fascinating. I wonder what your thoughts are about restraint. I think sometimes it's hard to be restrained. It's like we have to move so quickly. And there's so much competition and there's so much to look at and feedback to get. But like, I really love that this gate is coming up right now. I think at the highest level of the frequency in the gene keys, it's called stillness. And it's like the stilling of the wave, which is an interesting phenomenon that kind of transcends frequency altogether. And, you know, if you think about frequency being an oscillation of energy waves at different speeds, there's a paradox when we take frequency at either of the extremes. So if something's oscillating at a low frequency, if it gets lower and lower, it eventually stops altogether. And then something, energy waves vibrating higher and higher at the other end of the spectrum, become so close together that they merge to create another kind of nothingness. So again, thinking about that river, the super slow and then the rapids. And, you know, if you play that all the way to its end, it will end up being still, right? At the slowest end, at the quickest end. And so that's called, you know, it's kind of this blissed out place of being in complete, a meditative state of complete nothingness, which transcends frequency at all. And so, you know, the Buddha nature that I mentioned is coming up here again with keeping still mountain and the Buddha sitting in stillness beneath the Bodhi tree, waiting for all of the phenomena of the world to dissolve and the true reality of enlightenment to show through. So that's where we're at this week. We're definitely still in the holding of all of the extremes of the heat of the summer and the short nights and the long days. And we are also starting to find a place of like, okay, is it a balance? Is the teeter-totter just stopping in the middle, or are we reaching one end of the extreme or another till that point of stillness? It's about finding the stillness. So read one more thing that Richard Rudd says, that the gift has a huge impact on the emotional body, which communicates and exudes calmness through the aura. There have always been people in the world who remain completely unflustered by external crises, such as emotional turmoil or human conflict and war. There have always been such people among us, and these are the people of the 50-second gift. So, you know, it's hard to be calm in these times. We are still living through multiple genocides and just horrific things that are happening out in the world around the planet. And there's, it's so easy to get in the trap of like, I need to do something and I need that thing to be the best thing that I'm doing. And it needs to be the most aligned and the most purposeful. And I myself have to change the world and do something, make something different. And there, as we see throughout the course of the year, there are times for that to come through. There are times, to everything there is a season. And, what I really loved about this week is that the stillness doesn't last long. It's temporary, and the more intentional we are about it, if we practice our intentional conscious breathing, rather than waiting until we have to breathe deeply to calm ourselves down, if we decide to preempt with a conscious deep breath practice, for example, or meditation practice or movement practice, that will kind of set the stage to, purposefully create a stillness, and knowing that whatever we can create within our own bodies is going to be the seed that creates all of the ripples down the river. So I really wish you well, whether you're backpacking and climbing a mountain, or whether you're, continuing the social dynamism of summertime that was Gemini season and moving that in, or whether you're deciding to turn off your phones and your social media and take a little bit of a retreat and a respite from the heat of the day. I think all of those things are totally on brand for this midsummer time, and just hoping that you can spend a little bit of time this week doing some breathing practices. I'll link some in the show notes, actually. I have a lot of different breath practices, and I think that, that would be a really good one. Embody the Buddha sitting under the tree for just a little bit this week. So thanks so much for listening. As always, if you could share or like or follow this post, give it a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the podcast. That goes a long way and helps me reach more listeners. And I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful week ahead, and I'll see you next week. Bye.